It was 2:47 a.m. when the system flared to life. I was alone in the Vatican emergency communications bunker, 3 floors below the basilica, buried in stone, humidity, and secrets. The hum of ancient ventilation and the rhythmic blink of standby lights had nearly lulled me to sleep. My thermos of stale coffee sat untouched, my shift log empty, until the silence broke. One by one, every console light blinked red. The sudden change shattered the stillness like a scream. For a few seconds, I thought it was a power surge. Then the alarms kicked in, not the usual test signals we ran on Mondays, but a shrill, deafening klaxon that echoed off the concrete like war drums. Every monitor in the room went black. Static hissed through the speakers. I stared at the screen in front of me, breath caught in my throat, as glowing red text burned across the dark. Emergency. Alert. Classified Protocol 9. Seal the catacombs immediately. Code Malum Veritas. Human access is forbidden. I froze. Protocol 9 wasn't on any official training document. I'd gone through 3 levels of Vatican emergency certification and had never once heard it mentioned. The phrase Malum Veritas meant nothing to me. Not that Latin was my strong suit, but something about it felt wrong, like it had been scrawled on the walls of a crypt by someone who died screaming. I reached for the secure red line phone to call Father Giuliano, my commanding officer, but it rang before I could dial. I lifted the receiver. "Lockdown," said a voice, low, urgent, and unmistakably his. No explanation, no chance to ask questions. Then, click, silence. Before I could process what he'd said, the room responded. Heavy steel shutters crashed down over every door and passageway like a fortress sealing itself for siege. The fluorescence dimmed, bathing everything in a bluish, gray haze. A thick smell, damp, metallic, old, crept in. It overpowered the centuries-old scent of incense and candle smoke that normally lingered like a ghost in the air. That's when the monitors turned on again, but not with code or alerts. This time it was live video, feed 12, labeled simply Sub-Archive Vault C. I didn't recognize it at first. The angle was low, wide, showing a narrow corridor, flanked by carved skulls and bone piles built into the walls. Deep catacombs, a restricted area, sealed for decades. No one was supposed to be down there, but something, was. Movement flickered at the edge of the frame. I leaned closer. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a rat, maybe. But then it came into focus. A figure was dragging itself across the cold stone floor, limbs limp and contorted, like a puppet with severed strings. Its skin was pale, bloated, and covered in what looked like deep burns or lesions. One of its eyes was swollen shut, the other gaped open, jet black, not like it was bruised or hollow, just empty, like it was looking out from a place that didn't exist. As the figure crawled under the arch, I saw its uniform, Vatican security. Then the badge hanging loosely from its chest. Marco Rinaldi. I recoiled. Marco had gone missing in 1998. A routine inspection of the catacombs had turned into a ghost story. They'd said he'd wandered too far, gotten lost, maybe suffered a stroke. No body was ever recovered. No explanation ever offered. A closed file, a whispered prayer, and a replacement on the roster. And now he was here. I fumbled for the keyboard, trying to shut off the feed, but the controls were frozen. The screen stuttered, then turned to static again, only for another message to flash in sickly red. The dead do not rest. Seal the entrance or join them. Something banged against the emergency door behind me. Once, twice, 3 times. Each hit was harder than the last, and I could hear the hinges groaning against the impact. Dust trickled from the ceiling tiles. I backed toward the utility panel in the corner, my heart hammering, hands trembling. I had to get out. Whatever was on the other side of that door wasn't human anymore, if it ever was. There was an old maintenance shaft behind the servers, sealed with a rusted panel. I'd never used it, but Giuliano had pointed it out during my first tour, saying, "Only use this if you want to end up where God's eyes don't reach." At the time, I'd thought it was a joke. Now I wasn't so sure. I pried the panel loose and crawled inside. The shaft was narrow, hot, and smelled like mildew and decay. The metal walls groaned as I moved. At one point, I passed a section that looked like it had been clawed open. Deep gouges running in erratic arcs across the metal. I didn't stop to look closer. After maybe 10 minutes of crawling, I dropped down into an old junction chamber. Dust floated in thick beams of emergency light. The walls were covered in ancient Latin scrawlings, not painted but carved into the stone. I recognized one word over and over: obturare, seal. Seal what? Before I could gather my bearings, a voice crackled through the broken intercom embedded in the wall. A whisper, barely audible: "Do not let them follow." Then silence. I had no map, no signal, no instructions, just a sinking feeling that I was running out of time, and that Marco, or whatever had taken his form, wasn't the only thing crawling through the catacombs. I stood up and began walking. The corridor ahead was darker than anything I'd ever seen. The corridor ahead was wrong, not just dark. I've seen dark. I've worked night shifts in windowless rooms. I've crawled through blackout drills and unlit crypts. This was different. It was old. The kind of darkness that felt like it had weight. Like it had been here before light was even invented. The emergency lantern I carried flickered in protest. Its beam swallowed a few feet ahead of me as if the shadows were drinking the light. I kept moving, one hand trailing along the damp stone wall for balance, the other gripping the lantern like it was holy. Every few feet, the passage dipped slightly downward, and the air grew colder, thinner. I passed alcoves filled with bones, neatly stacked skulls, rib cages woven into the mortar. Some of the bones were charred, others still wet. I didn't know exactly where I was. The Vatican's subterranean layout was deliberately fragmented. Different departments kept their own maps, and the catacombs had been expanded, sealed, and reshaped so many times that even the archivists argued about where things led. But I recognized a symbol etched above one arched stone doorway, a broken halo with 3 vertical slashes beneath it. That meant I was near the Archivum Prohibitum, the Forbidden Archive. And if I was right, there might be answers there. The door was iron, blackened with age, its hinges fused with rust and something thicker, something that looked like dried sap but smelled faintly of copper. The crucifix above the entrance had been twisted. Christ's face was melted, smooth, blank, and eyeless. Beneath it, in Latin, was a phrase I tried not to read aloud. "He who knows the names beneath shall not speak above." The door wasn't locked. It opened with a slow, reluctant groan that sent dust cascading from the lintel. Inside was a narrow corridor of shelves, rows upon rows of stone niches, each containing a sealed relic box, bound scrolls, or books wrapped in chains. No electric lights, just old oil lanterns hanging from hooks. One of them was still lit, which meant someone had been here recently. I moved cautiously, brushing cobwebs aside as I went. The air was dense with the smell of decay and scorched parchment. Faint whispers echoed from deeper in the archive, but there was no one in sight. I turned a corner and found the central chamber, a domed room with a single altar in the center. Atop it sat a lead-lined crate, no larger than a suitcase, marked with a wax seal that had partially melted into the surface. Its tag read, D39, Relic of the 10th Mouth. My Vatican credentials shouldn't have opened it, but the crate let out a soft click when I touched it. My ID badge pulsed red for a second. Then the lid lifted. Inside was a thick, leather-bound tome. The cover was black, stitched with thread that shimmered oddly in the lantern light. There was no title, only a sigil, a circle surrounded by 9 jagged lines and an upside-down key in the center. As I picked it up, the book was warm, almost too warm. I hesitated, then opened it. The pages bled. Not figuratively, they bled. A dark, syrupy fluid oozed from the ink, thick and coagulated. The text rearranged itself as I watched, symbols shifting like live worms across the page until they formed Latin phrases. My skin prickled as I read. The Vatican was built atop a prison. Beneath the prison, a vault. Beneath the vault, a door. Behind the door lies a name not meant to be remembered. When the name is spoken, it awakens. I should have dropped the book and run, but I kept reading. Each line peeled something open inside me, some ancient, fearful instinct. The book didn't describe a demon. It described a mouth of silence, a being that devours not flesh, but memory, identity, time. It does not speak. It erases. And it had followers once, a cult of forgotten monks who fed it offerings in exchange for power. They were erased, scrubbed from all records, all but one. His name was Marco. The realization hit me so hard I staggered back. That thing I saw on the camera feed, it wasn't just some cursed revenant or possession victim. Marco had become one of the mouth's echoes, a being trapped between existence and non-being, something half erased. And the book? The book remembered. A sudden metallic slam echoed through the archive. I slammed the book shut and backed against the altar, listening. Footsteps, bare, wet, slapping lightly against the stone floor just outside the chamber. The lanterns flickered. Then came a voice, whispering in the same strained Latin I'd heard through the comms system earlier. Only now it was coming from the dark. Clausum est, clausum manere debet. Clausum est. It is sealed. It must remain sealed. It is sealed. I crept toward the side passage, hugging the book close. As I moved, the whispers stopped, replaced by a soft scraping, nails on stone. Long, deliberate, getting closer. I broke into a sprint. The side passage led to an old service stairwell, spiraling downward. The air here was colder still. My breath fogged in front of me. I descended in darkness, my feet echoing like thunder in the confined space. Whatever was behind me didn't follow, at least not loudly. At the bottom, the stairs ended in a sealed chamber with no door, just a stone wall covered in carvings. The same sigil from the book, the circle, the lines, the inverted key, was etched into the center. Beneath it was a narrow slit, just wide enough for the book. I knew what it wanted. I hesitated. If the book was keeping the mouth bound, removing it might be a death sentence, or worse, but carrying it with me, I'd already seen what it did to the shadows, to time. The minute I picked it up, the air had felt wrong, like gravity shifted. I slid the book into the stone slot. It clicked into place. A soft, vibrating hum filled the chamber, then stopped. Everything went silent, too silent. No echoes, no breath, not even the sound of my own heartbeat. Then a voice, clear, close, inside my mind. Now you know. I blacked out. I don't know for how long. When I woke, I was lying in the corridor just outside the archivum. The lantern was gone. The door was shut behind me. My badge was melted, and my left hand had a brand scorched into the skin. The same sigil from the book. I made my way back up through the maintenance shafts, dizzy and freezing. The Vatican above had gone silent. No sirens, no alarms, just a static hum through the comms system, and the screens still flashing that same message. Emergency alert. Seal the catacombs immediately. Malum veritas, access forbidden. But no one's answering. Not Giuliano, not the Swiss guard, not the security team. The entire surface feels wrong, like it's stuck in time. I've been trying to make a call out, but every line loops me back to static. I'm leaving this record here. If anyone finds this, don't open anything, don't speak the name, and don't read the book. The mouth is awake.